The moment I saw Sharon Whitmore standing in my driveway with her arms crossed over her designer blazer and that pursed lip expression I had come to dread, I knew my Tuesday was about to go sideways. I was loading my heated pressure washer into the back of my truck, preparing for another day at my mobile food cart cleaning business, when she marched up with a manila folder clutched in her perfectly manicured hands. The morning sun in Scottsdale, Arizona, was already promising another scorcher, and I had 3 clients scheduled before noon. I did not have time for whatever complaint she had manufactured this week. "Mr. Garrett Ingram," she said, her voice dripping with artificial sweetness. "I need to speak with you about your equipment." I set down the extension cord I was coiling and turned to face her. "Good morning, Sharon. What seems to be the problem?" She tapped the folder against her palm. "The HOA board has received several complaints about the noise and appearance of that industrial equipment you have been storing in your garage. According to Article 7, Section 3 of our community guidelines, no commercial vehicles or equipment may be stored on residential property." My jaw tightened. I had lived in Desert Springs Estates for 3 years, and in that time, Sharon Whitmore had made it her personal mission to find something wrong with every single property owner in our development. She was the self-appointed enforcer of the HOA, though her actual title was just board member. The president of the HOA, an elderly retired accountant named Bob Chen, mostly let Sharon run wild because it was easier than dealing with her constant phone calls and emails. "Sharon, we have been over this before. My truck is a standard pickup, not a commercial vehicle, and my pressure washer stays in my garage. I am not violating any rules." She flipped open the folder and pulled out a printed photograph. It showed my garage door open, with my heated pressure washer visible inside, along with various hoses, cleaning supplies, and my equipment trailer. "This photograph was taken last week. Your garage door was open for over 4 hours, exposing the entire neighborhood to the site of your commercial operation." I took a deep breath, counting to 5 before responding. It was 98 degrees that day. I was organizing my equipment, and my garage does not have air conditioning. "There is no rule against having my garage door open. There is a rule against running a business from your home," she countered. "And I have documentation that you are operating a mobile food service equipment cleaning company from this address. I have a business license with the city of Scottsdale. My business address is listed as my home office, which is perfectly legal in this municipality. I do not conduct the actual cleaning here. I go to my clients' locations. That is what mobile means." Sharon's lips pressed into an even thinner line. "Regardless, the equipment is the issue. The board has voted, and we are requiring you to remove all commercial equipment from the premises within 30 days, or you will face daily fines of $100. I felt heat rising in my chest that had nothing to do with the Arizona sun. "You cannot be serious. That equipment cost me $15,000. It is how I make my living. Where exactly am I supposed to store it? That is not the HOA's concern. Perhaps you should have considered that before moving into a residential community and starting a business." She held out a formal letter from the folder. "This is your official notice. You have 30 days from today." I took the letter, my hand shaking slightly with frustration. "I will be contacting the HOA board directly about this. This is ridiculous." "The board stands behind this decision unanimously," she said, though I doubted she had actually consulted anyone but herself. "Have a good day, Mr. Ingram." She turned and walked back down my driveway, her heels clicking on the concrete. I stood there for a moment, staring at the letter, before crumpling it slightly in my fist. Then I smoothed it out, took a photo with my phone, and sent a text to my lawyer friend, Marcus Davidson, asking if he had time for a consultation. I still had to work, so I finished loading my truck and headed to my first appointment. My business, Clean Cart Solutions, specialized in deep cleaning food trucks, mobile food carts, and concession stands. With Arizona's strict health department regulations, food service operators needed regular professional cleaning to maintain their permits. I had built a solid client base over the past 2 years, and the heated pressure washer was absolutely essential to my operation. The heated model was not just a luxury, it was a requirement. The Maricopa County Health Department mandated that mobile food units undergo sanitation procedures that included high-temperature water application to eliminate pathogens and food residue effectively. Cold water pressure washing could not achieve the same level of sanitation. I had the documentation to prove it, including letters from the health department and my sanitation permit that specifically listed heated pressure washing equipment as required for compliance. My first client of the day was Taco Paradise, a popular food truck that operated near Arizona State University's campus in Tempe. The owner, Miguel Santos, was waiting for me when I arrived at his commissary space. "Morning, Greg," he said, using the nickname everyone called me. "Ready to make this thing sparkle, always," I replied, though my mind was still on Sharon's ultimatum. I began setting up my equipment, connecting hoses and checking pressure gauges. The heated pressure washer hummed to life, and I started the methodical process of deep cleaning every surface of the truck. "Everything okay?" Miguel asked, noticing my distraction. "You seem off today." I explained the situation with the HOA as I worked. Miguel whistled low. "Man, that is rough. You cannot do this job without that equipment. I mean, my health permit depends on your sanitation certificate. If you cannot clean my truck to code, I cannot operate." "Exactly," I said, spraying down the cooking surfaces with the heated water and degreaser solution. I have been trying to explain that to the HOA, but they do not care about anything except their arbitrary rules. Can they really make you get rid of it? I am going to talk to a lawyer. There has to be something I can do. I finished Miguel's truck and moved on to my next 2 appointments, but the HOA issue gnawed at me all day. By the time I got home that evening, I had 3 texts from Marcus saying he had researched the issue and wanted to meet for coffee the next morning. That night, I pulled out all my business documentation: my city business license, my state contractor's license, my liability insurance, my sanitation permit from the health department, and all the technical specifications for my heated pressure washer. I organized everything into a binder, along with copies of the HOA covenants and restrictions. The next morning, I met Marcus at a coffee shop in Old Town Scottsdale. He was already at a corner table with his laptop open when I arrived, his reading glasses perched on his nose as he scrolled through documents. "This is an interesting situation," he said as I sat down with my coffee. "The HOA definitely has authority to regulate certain aspects of property use, but they cannot override state and local laws regarding home-based businesses. So they cannot force me to remove my equipment." "It is more complicated than that," Marcus said, turning his laptop so I could see the screen. "Arizona law is actually pretty friendly to home-based businesses. The state statute specifically prohibits HOAs from banning home-based businesses outright. However, they can regulate things like parking, noise, and visible equipment. My equipment is in my garage. It is not visible unless the garage door is open." "Right, but that is where they are getting you. The photo showing your garage door open gives them an argument that the equipment is visible to the neighborhood. However, and this is important, They cannot ban the equipment entirely if it is required for your licensed business operation. I leaned forward. The heated pressure washer is required. I have documentation from the health department that specifically lists it as mandatory equipment for my sanitation permit. Marcus's eyebrows rose. You have that documentation with you? I pulled out my binder and showed him the letter from the Maricopa County Environmental Health Department. It clearly stated that mobile food service cleaning operations must utilize heated water pressure washing systems capable of reaching and maintaining specific temperature thresholds for proper sanitation and pathogen elimination. This is exactly what we need, Marcus said. If your equipment is legally required for health department compliance, the HOA cannot force you to remove it. That would be preventing you from operating a legal business, which violates Arizona statute. So what do I do? First, request a formal hearing with the HOA board. Do not just deal with Sharon Whitmore. She is clearly overstepping her authority. Second, bring this documentation to the hearing. Third, I will draft a letter explaining the legal position. If they insist on pursuing this, we can seek an injunction. I felt some of the tension leave my shoulders. Thank you, Marcus. I really appreciate this. No problem. Just do not do anything hasty. Follow the proper procedures, document everything, and do not engage with Sharon outside of official board meetings. People like her thrive on conflict. Do not give her ammunition. I took Marcus's advice and sent a formal email that afternoon requesting a hearing before the full HOA board. I explained that I was contesting the equipment removal demand and had documentation supporting my position. I copied all 7 board members on the email, including Bob Chen, the president. Bob responded within an hour, saying the board would convene a special meeting the following week to address my concerns. Sharon replied all to the email thread 15 minutes later, stating that the board's decision was final and the hearing was merely a formality. Marcus had warned me not to engage, so I did not respond to her message. The week leading up to the hearing felt endless. I continued working, cleaning food trucks and carts across the Phoenix metro area. Several of my clients asked about the situation, and I explained what was happening. To my surprise, many of them offered to write letters supporting my business and confirming the necessity of the heated pressure washing equipment. Miguel from Taco Paradise went a step further. I will come to the meeting if you want, he said. I will explain that without your service, I cannot maintain my health permit. You are not just some guy making noise in the neighborhood. You are providing an essential service. I really appreciate that, Miguel. Let me see how the hearing goes. I might take you up on that. By the time the hearing date arrived, I had collected 5 letters from clients, all explaining that my sanitation services were required for their health department compliance. I also had a letter from the Maricopa County Health Department itself, which I had requested after explaining the situation to one of their inspectors I had worked with before. The letter confirmed that heated pressure washing was not optional for mobile food service sanitation, and that discontinuing such services could lead to health code violations for food operators across the county. The HOA meeting was held in the community clubhouse on a Tuesday evening. I arrived 15 minutes early with Marcus and my binder of documentation. The clubhouse was a single-story building with a large meeting room, a small kitchen, and a pool table area. About 20 residents were already seated in folding chairs arranged in rows facing a long table where the board members would sit. Sharon was there early too, of course, sitting in the front row with her own folder of materials. She gave me a tight smile as I walked in but did not say anything. I took a seat in the 3rd row with Marcus beside me. At 7 o'clock sharp, The 7 board members filed in and took their seats at the front table. Bob Chen sat in the middle, with Sharon immediately to his right. The other board members were a mix of residents I recognized, but did not know well. 2 retired couples and a middle-aged woman named Patricia who worked in real estate. Bob called the meeting to order and went through some standard business first, approving minutes from the previous meeting and discussing landscaping bids for the common areas. Then he looked down at his agenda and said, "Next item is the appeal filed by Greg Ingram regarding the equipment storage violation notice. Greg, would you like to present your case?" I stood up, and Marcus handed me the binder. I walked to the front of the room, feeling everyone's eyes on me. "Thank you for hearing my appeal. I received a notice from the HOA demanding that I remove my heated pressure washer from my property within 30 days or face daily fines. I am here tonight to explain why that demand is not only unreasonable, but also illegal under Arizona law." Sharon shifted in her seat, but Bob held up a hand, indicating she should wait her turn to speak. I continued, "I operate a licensed mobile food service equipment cleaning business called Clean Cart Solutions. My business is properly licensed with the city of Scottsdale and the state of Arizona. I pay all required taxes and carry full liability insurance. The heated pressure washer in question is not just equipment I prefer to use. It is legally required equipment for me to maintain my sanitation permit with the Maricopa County Health Department." I opened the binder and pulled out the Health Department letter. This letter, dated just last week, confirms that heated pressure washing systems are mandatory for proper sanitation of mobile food service equipment. The health code requires water temperatures that can only be achieved with heated equipment. Without this equipment, I cannot legally operate my business, and my clients cannot maintain their health permits. I handed copies of the letter to Bob, who scanned it quickly before passing it down the table to the other board members. "Furthermore," I said, "Arizona Revised Statute 33-1808 specifically prohibits homeowners associations from banning home-based businesses or requiring conditions that make it impossible to operate a legal home-based business. By demanding I remove equipment that is required by law for my business operation, the HOA would be violating state statute." I pulled out Marcus's legal memo and distributed copies to the board members. "My attorney has prepared this analysis of the applicable law. The bottom line is that while the HOA has the right to regulate certain aspects of property use, it cannot override state and county requirements or prevent me from operating a legal business." Sharon could not contain herself any longer. "This is not about preventing your business. This is about maintaining property values and neighborhood aesthetics. Your garage looks like a commercial warehouse." "My garage looks like a garage," I replied, keeping my voice level. "The equipment is stored inside. It is not visible unless the garage door is open, which is my right as a property owner." "You had it open for 4 hours," Sharon shot back, "because it was 98 degrees and I was organizing my equipment. There is no HOA rule limiting how long residents can have their garage doors open." Bob cleared his throat. "Let us stay focused on the main issue. Greg, I understand your points about the legal requirements, but do you have any alternatives? Could you rent a storage unit for the equipment?" "I could, but that would significantly impact my business operations and create inefficiency that would likely force me to raise my rates or reduce my service area. More importantly, the question is not whether I could find an alternative. The question is whether the HOA has the legal authority to demand that I do so. Based on Arizona law and the health department requirements, they do not." I returned to my seat, and Sharon immediately stood up. She launched into a 10-minute speech about community standards, property values, and the importance of maintaining the residential character of the neighborhood. She presented her folder of photographs, showing my garage at various times with the door open, highlighting the pressure washer and other equipment visible inside. "This is not someone working from a home office on a computer," she said. "This is industrial equipment. This is a commercial operation. If we allow this, what is next? Will someone want to store a cement mixer, a bulldozer? Where do we draw the line?" "The line is drawn by state law and common sense," Marcus said, standing up. He had not planned to speak, but Sharon's increasingly dramatic claims seemed to push him over the edge. "Mr. Ingram is not storing construction equipment. He is storing the tools of his trade, which he is legally entitled to do. The equipment stays in his garage. He does not have clients coming to his home. He does not generate unusual traffic or noise at odd hours. He is exactly the kind of home-based business owner that Arizona law is designed to protect." Sharon opened her mouth to respond, but Bob held up both hands. "All right, I think we have heard enough from both sides. The board needs to discuss this and vote. Greg, Marcus, thank you for presenting your case. We will take a 15-minute recess and then reconvene to make a decision." Marcus and I stepped outside into the warm evening air. The sun was setting, painting the desert sky in shades of orange and pink. "I think that went well," Marcus said. "Bob seems reasonable, and at least some of the other board members looked convinced." Sharon looked ready to explode, I said. "Let her. She does not have the legal authority to enforce this, and I think the board is starting to realize that." We went back inside after 15 minutes. The board members were back at their table, looking like they had been having an intense discussion. Bob called the meeting back to order. "The board has discussed Mr. Ingram's appeal," Bob said. "We have reviewed the documentation he provided, including the letter from the health department and the legal analysis. After careful consideration, we have decided to put this matter to a vote." My heart pounded as Bob went down the line, asking each board member to vote. Patricia voted to rescind the violation notice. The two retired couples split. One couple voted to rescind, the other voted to uphold. That was 3 votes to rescind, 2 to uphold. Then it came to Sharon. "I vote to uphold the violation," she said firmly. "This sets a dangerous precedent." That made it 3-3 with Bob as the deciding vote. He looked at his notes for a moment, then at me, then at Sharon. "I vote to rescind the violation notice. The motion passes 4-3. Mr. Ingram may keep his equipment on the property, subject to reasonable conditions." Relief washed over me, but Sharon was on her feet immediately. "This is outrageous. We are setting ourselves up for legal liability and neighborhood degradation." "Sharon, the vote is complete," Bob said firmly. "However, Greg, we do need to establish some conditions. The equipment must remain in your garage with the door closed except when you are actively loading or unloading. We are not trying to make your life difficult, but we do need to balance your business needs with neighborhood concerns." "That is completely reasonable," I said. "I have no problem with that condition. Additionally, if any neighbors complain about noise or other disturbances related to your business operations, we will need to revisit this decision." "Understood. I run my generator and equipment at client sites, not at my home. There should not be any noise issues." Bob nodded. "Then this matter is resolved. We will send you a formal letter confirming the board's decision and outlining the conditions. Meeting adjourned." I shook Marcus's hand, thanking him for his help. Several other residents came up to me afterward, saying they thought the decision was fair. One man mentioned that he also ran a consulting business from his home and appreciated the board standing up for reasonable home-based business rights. Sharon stormed out of the clubhouse without speaking to anyone. I figured that was the end of it, and I could finally move on with my life and my business. I was wrong. 2 days later, I came home from work to find a Scottsdale City Code enforcement officer in my driveway. He was young, maybe late 20s, with a clipboard and a city vehicle parked on the street. "Are you Greg Ingram?" he asked. "Yes. What is this about?" "I am Officer Derek Chen with Code Enforcement. We received a complaint about unpermitted commercial activity at this address. I need to inspect your property and verify your business licenses." I felt my stomach drop. This had Sharon written all over it. Of course. "What do you need to see?" I showed Officer Chen my business license, my contractor's license, my liability insurance, and my sanitation permit. He examined each document carefully, taking notes on his clipboard. Then he asked to see my garage and the equipment in question. I opened the garage door, revealing my pressure washer, hoses, cleaning supplies, and equipment trailer. Officer Chen walked around, examining everything. He took several photographs. "Is there a problem?" I asked. "I need to verify a few things back at the office," he said. "The complaint alleges that you are operating a commercial garage and violating residential zoning codes. Based on what I am seeing here, it appears you are operating a mobile service business, which is generally permitted in residential zones with the proper licensing. But I need to confirm that with my supervisor." "I have all the proper licensing," I said, trying to keep the frustration out of my voice. "I went through the entire permitting process when I started my business." "I understand, Mr. Ingram. I will review everything and get back to you within 5 business days. In the meantime, you can continue operating as usual. This is just a preliminary inspection based on the complaint." After he left, I immediately called Marcus and explained what had happened. "Sharon is escalating," I said. "She lost at the HOA level, so now she is trying to get the city to shut me down." "This is harassment," Marcus said. "Document everything. Keep copies of all your communications with the code enforcement officer. If the city finds that your business is properly licensed, and Sharon continues filing frivolous complaints, we may have grounds for a harassment claim against her personally." The next few days were stressful. I kept expecting another visit from code enforcement or some new problem to emerge. I was so distracted that I nearly forgot to properly rinse a client's food cart, catching my mistake just in time. On the 5th day, Officer Chen called me. "Mr. Ingram, I completed my review of your business operation. Everything is in order. You have all the required licenses and permits. Your business qualifies as a mobile service operation, which is permitted in residential zones under Scottsdale Municipal Code. I am closing the complaint as unfounded." "Thank you," I said, relief flooding through me. "Will the person who filed the complaint be notified?" "Yes, we will send a closure letter to the complainant explaining that no violation was found." I wondered how Sharon would react to that news. I did not have to wait long to find out. That evening, I was in my garage organizing equipment when I heard a car pull up. I looked out to see Sharon getting out of her Mercedes, her face flushed with anger. She marched up my driveway before I could even react. "You think you are so clever," she said, her voice shaking. "Getting your lawyer involved, manipulating the board, wasting city resources." "Sharon, I did not manipulate anyone. I presented facts and documentation. The board made their decision, and the city confirmed that my business is legal." "You are destroying this neighborhood," she said, jabbing her finger toward me. "Property values are going to plummet because we have commercial operations running out of people's garages. I have worked too hard to build this community to let someone like you tear it down." "Someone like me," I said, my own anger rising. Someone who works for a living. Someone who follows the law and runs a legitimate business. What exactly is your problem with me, Sharon? My problem is that you do not respect the rules. You do not respect what we are trying to build here. I respect the actual rules, not the made-up rules you try to enforce. There is a difference. Sharon's face was now bright red. This is not over. I will find a way to get you out of here. Are you threatening me? I pulled out my phone, because I am recording this conversation now. If you continue to harass me, my lawyer has advised me that I can pursue legal action against you personally. Sharon took a step back, her eyes widening slightly. She seemed to realize she had gone too far. You have not heard the last of this, she said, but her voice had lost some of its conviction. She turned and walked back to her car, peeling out of the street with a screech of tires. I immediately sent the audio recording to Marcus. He called me back within minutes. Greg, you need to file a formal harassment complaint with the HOA board. What Sharon just did crosses a line. She came to your property and made threats. That is not acceptable conduct for a board member. I drafted a formal complaint that evening, describing Sharon's visit and attaching the audio recording. I sent it to Bob Chen and requested that it be addressed at the next regular board meeting. I also sent a copy to Marcus for his review. Bob called me the next morning. Greg, I am really sorry about this. Sharon has been a dedicated board member for years, but I think she has become too emotionally invested in this situation. I am going to speak with her and the other board members about this. I appreciate that, Bob. I just want to run my business and live in peace. I am not trying to cause problems for anyone. I know. And for what it is worth, I think your business is great. My nephew actually owns a food truck, and he says finding good cleaning services is really difficult. You are providing a valuable service. Thank you. That means a lot. Let me handle Sharon. I will make sure she understands that continued harassment will result in her removal from the board. For about 2 weeks, things were quiet. I worked my normal schedule, cleaning food trucks and carts across the valley. My business was actually growing. 2 of my clients had referred their friends, and I had picked up 3 new accounts. I was considering hiring an assistant to help with the increasing workload. Then on a Wednesday morning, I got a call from Miguel at Taco Paradise. Hey Greg, I just got a visit from a health inspector. He said he received a complaint about my truck not being properly sanitized. My blood ran cold. What happened? The inspector did a full examination. Fortunately, everything was perfect because you just cleaned it 2 days ago. He found 0 violations, but he said the complaint specifically mentioned concerns about my cleaning service provider using improper equipment. Let me guess. The complaint came from someone in Scottsdale. He could not tell me who filed it, but yeah, he said it was a Scottsdale resident who claimed to have knowledge of sanitation practices. I thanked Miguel for letting me know and immediately called the Maricopa County Health Department. I asked to speak with a supervisor and explained the situation. The supervisor I spoke with, a woman named Carol Henderson, was very professional. Mr. Ingram, I cannot confirm or deny specific complaints due to confidentiality rules. However, I can tell you that we take all complaints seriously and investigate them thoroughly. If your client was found to be in compliance, that speaks to the quality of your work. I appreciate that. But I am concerned that someone is filing false complaints against my clients in an attempt to damage my business reputation. Is there any recourse if that is happening? Filing a false complaint with the health department is a serious matter, Carol said. If you have evidence that someone is knowingly making false reports, you should document it and potentially report it to law enforcement. False reporting can be considered a form of fraud or harassment, depending on the circumstances. I thanked Carol and called Marcus again. This situation was spiraling beyond a simple HOA dispute. Marcus, Sharon is now going after my clients by filing false health department complaints. This is affecting my business reputation and could cost me clients. This is definitely actionable, Marcus said. But we need to prove she is the one filing the complaints. Health departments usually do not disclose complaint sources. Do you have any evidence linking Sharon to the complaints? Just the timing and the nature of the complaints. It is too coincidental. That is circumstantial. Let me think about this. In the meantime, document everything. If you get any more complaints, note the dates and details. We need to establish a pattern. Over the next week, 2 more of my clients received surprise health inspections based on anonymous complaints. Both passed with flying colors, but the disruption was affecting my business relationships. One client, a hot dog cart operator named Frank, was particularly upset. "Greg, I love your work, but I cannot deal with health inspectors showing up every other day," he said. "I do not know what is going on, but it is causing me stress I do not need. I might need to find another cleaning service until this blows over." Losing Frank would hurt. He was one of my original clients and had referred several others to me. I understand, Frank. I am working on resolving the situation. Someone is targeting my business with false complaints, but I am gathering evidence to stop it. I hope you figure it out, man. It is not your work. You do a great job. It is just the hassle. That evening, I sat down and made a list of everything that had happened since Sharon first confronted me in my driveway. The timeline was damning. HOA violation notice, city code enforcement complaint, health department complaints against multiple clients. Each escalation came after Sharon was unsuccessful at the previous level. I showed the timeline to Marcus. "This is good," he said. "We have a clear pattern of harassment. The question is how to prove Sharon is behind the health department complaints. Without that proof, we only have circumstantial evidence." The break came from an unexpected source. Patricia, the board member who had voted in my favor at the hearing, called me one evening. "Greg, I need to tell you something, but I need to do it confidentially. Can we meet somewhere outside the neighborhood?" We met at a Starbucks in North Scottsdale the next morning. Patricia looked nervous, glancing around before speaking. "I should not be telling you this, but I think what Sharon is doing is wrong. I was at her house last week for a book club meeting. She left her phone on the kitchen counter while she went to get something. I saw a text message notification on her screen from someone named Carol at the health department. My heart raced. Carol Henderson. I do not know the last name. But the preview of the text said something like, "Received your report. Will investigate." I did not think much of it at the time, but after hearing about the health inspections your clients have been getting, I put 2 and 2 together. "Do you think Carol at the health department and Sharon know each other?" I looked Carol Henderson up on Facebook after I saw that text. Turns out she and Sharon went to Arizona State together. They are friends. This was the connection we needed. "Patricia, would you be willing to provide a written statement about what you saw?" She hesitated. "I do not want to get dragged into legal proceedings. I am only telling you this because what Sharon is doing is wrong, but I still have to live in this neighborhood and serve on the board with her." "I understand. Even just knowing about the connection helps. Thank you for telling me." I reported everything to Marcus. He immediately filed a public records request with the health department for all complaints filed against my clients, including any identifying information about the complaint sources. Arizona's public records law was strong, and while the health department could not disclose complaint sources to the general public, they had to respond to formal public records requests with any non-privileged information. The response came back, 10 days later. The health department had redacted the complainant names, citing confidentiality provisions. But they had to provide the dates the complaints were filed and some general information about the nature of the complaints. Marcus Cross referenced this with phone records obtained through a separate legal process. "Greg, we have got her," Marcus said when he called me with the results. The complaints to the health department were all filed from the same phone number. I subpoenaed Sharon's phone records as part of a pre-litigation discovery process. The numbers match. Sharon filed all of the complaints. Can we use this to stop her? Better than that. Filing false complaints with a government health department is a criminal offense under Arizona law. It is classified as false reporting to law enforcement or a government agency. We need to report this to the Scottsdale Police Department. I felt a strange mix of vindication and anxiety. I had not wanted things to escalate to criminal charges, but Sharon had left me no choice. Her actions were not just harassing me. They were damaging my business and wasting government resources. Marcus helped me prepare a comprehensive report for the police. We included the timeline of events, the documentation of Sharon's escalating harassment, the phone records linking her to the false health department complaints, Patricia's statement, and testimony from my clients about the disruption caused by the false inspections. We filed the report at the Scottsdale Police Department on a Thursday afternoon. The desk officer took our information and said a detective would be assigned to review the case. I did not know what to expect or how long it would take. The detective, a woman named Sarah Martinez, called me the following Tuesday. "Mr. Ingram, I have reviewed your report regarding Sharon Whitmore. I have also spoken with the health department and confirmed that multiple false complaints were filed. I need to interview Miss Whitmore and gather some additional information, but based on what I have seen so far, there appears to be sufficient evidence to pursue charges." "What happens next?" I asked. "I will complete my investigation and submit a report to the city prosecutor's office. They will decide whether to file formal charges. In the meantime, I would advise you to avoid any contact with Miss Whitmore and document any further incidents of harassment." "I have been avoiding her as much as possible." "Good. I will be in touch as the investigation progresses." 2 weeks later, I was loading my truck for a morning appointment when I saw 2 Scottsdale police cars pull up in front of Sharon's house, 3 doors down from mine. I watched as Detective Martinez and another officer went to the door. Sharon answered, and I could see the shock on her face even from a distance. They spoke with her for several minutes at her doorway, then she stepped back inside, presumably to get something. When she emerged, she was in handcuffs. I stood frozen in my driveway, watching as they placed Sharon in the back of one of the police cars. Several neighbors had come out of their houses, drawn by the unusual activity. Sharon saw me standing there as the police car drove past. The look on her face was pure rage mixed with humiliation. I felt no satisfaction, only a hollow sense of relief that maybe this nightmare was finally ending. Detective Martinez called me later that day. "I wanted to let you know that we arrested Sharon Whitmore this morning. She has been charged with 5 counts of false reporting to a government agency and 1 count of harassment. The city prosecutor felt there was sufficient evidence to proceed with prosecution. What happens now? She will be arraigned, and the case will proceed through the court system. You may be called as a witness if the case goes to trial. We will keep you updated." "Thank you, Detective." The neighborhood was buzzing with gossip. Several residents reached out to me, asking what had happened. I kept my responses brief, explaining only that Sharon had been filing false complaints against my business, and the matter was now in the hands of law enforcement. Bob Chen called an emergency HOA board meeting to address the situation. Sharon had been removed from the board pending the outcome of the criminal case. Bob asked if I would attend the meeting to explain what had happened. I agreed, and Marcus came with me. The clubhouse was packed. Nearly every resident in the development seemed to be there. Bob called the meeting to order and explained that Sharon was no longer on the board. Then he invited me to speak. I walked to the front of the room and gave a brief summary of events, focusing on the facts and avoiding personal attacks on Sharon. I explained how she had escalated from HOA complaints to city code enforcement to filing false health department reports against my clients. I never wanted any of this, I said. I just wanted to run my business and be a good neighbor. But when someone continuously harasses you and damages your livelihood, you have to stand up for yourself. I hope we can all move forward and focus on making this a good community to live in. The room was silent for a moment. Then several people started clapping. Soon most of the room was applauding. I sat back down, feeling emotionally drained. Bob addressed the room. This has been a difficult situation for everyone, but it is also a learning opportunity for our board. We need to make sure we are enforcing rules fairly and reasonably, not using HOA authority to pursue personal vendettas. I propose that we revise our enforcement procedures to include better checks and balances. The board voted unanimously to create a new enforcement review process that would require any violation notice to be approved by at least 3 board members, not just one. They also voted to create a formal appeals process for residents, separate from standard board meetings. Over the next few months, Sharon's case worked its way through the court system. Her lawyer tried to get the charges dismissed, arguing that she had filed the complaints in good faith based on her concerns about public health. But the evidence was overwhelming. The prosecutor showed that Sharon had no legitimate basis to believe my clients were violating health codes, and her complaints had been filed in a pattern designed to harm my business after she failed to remove my equipment through the HOA. In the end, Sharon pleaded no contest to 3 counts of false reporting in exchange for the other charges being dropped. She was sentenced to 6 months probation, ordered to pay restitution for my legal fees and lost business income, and required to complete community service. She was also permanently banned from serving on the HOA board. The day her sentence was announced, I was cleaning a food truck in Temp when Marcus called with the news. "It is over, Greg. She took the plea deal. How much is the restitution?" $12,000, covering your legal fees and the business income you lost when Frank and the other client temporarily stopped using your services. Plus, she has to pay the health department's costs for investigating the false complaints. "I am just glad it is done," I said. "You should be proud of yourself. You stood up to a bully and won. Not everyone has the courage to do that." After I finished the call with Marcus, I stood back and looked at the gleaming food truck I had just finished cleaning. The heated pressure washer sat in my truck bed, humming quietly. This machine, this business, had become the center of an absurd conflict. But in fighting for my right to keep it and use it, I had learned something about myself and about the importance of standing up for what was right. Miguel pulled up in his truck, coming to check on his Taco Paradise unit. "Looks great, Greg," he said, examining the spotless cooking surfaces. "Hey, I heard about what happened with that HOA lady. That is crazy." "It is finally over," I said. "She pleaded out today." "Good. You know, I have been thinking. I have 2 friends who are looking for a reliable cleaning service. They own food trucks over in Mesa. Want me to give them your number?" "Absolutely. I could use the business. Consider it done. And hey, thank you for fighting that battle. If she had managed to shut you down, It would have hurt all of us who depend on proper sanitation services. As I drove home that evening, the sun setting over the desert mountains, I reflected on the past few months. What had started as a simple confrontation over equipment storage had spiraled into false complaints, criminal charges, and a neighborhood upheaval. But through it all, I had learned the value of documentation, the importance of knowing your rights, and the necessity of standing firm when someone tries to abuse their authority. When I pulled into my driveway, I hit the button to open my garage door. The door rolled up, revealing my pressure washer, hoses, and cleaning equipment neatly organized inside. I smiled. This was my garage, my equipment, my business. No one was going to take that away from me. Over the following weeks, life in Desert Springs Estates gradually returned to normal. Sharon put her house on the market and moved out within 2 months. I heard through the neighborhood grapevine that she had relocated to Fountain Hills, another Phoenix suburb. I wished her neighbors there the best of luck. Bob Chen proved to be a much better HOA president when he was not being overshadowed by Sharon's aggressive enforcement tactics. He focused on actual community improvement projects, like upgrading the landscaping and organizing neighborhood events. The new board member who replaced Sharon was a retired teacher named Linda, who brought a much more reasonable approach to rule enforcement. My business continued to grow. The referrals from Miguel and my other clients kept coming. Within 6 months of the case ending, I had enough steady work that I finally hired that assistant I had been considering. His name was Tommy, a recent graduate from the Arizona Culinary Institute who understood food service operations and was eager to learn the sanitation side of the business. Training Tommy gave me a new perspective on everything I had been through. As I explained the importance of the heated pressure washer and the health department regulations, I realized how close I had come to losing all of this. If Sharon had succeeded in forcing me to remove my equipment, I would have had to shut down my business or relocate. Either option would have been devastating. One afternoon, about 8 months after Sharon's sentencing, I ran into Patricia at the grocery store. We had not spoken since she had provided the crucial information about Sharon's connection to the health department. "Greg," she said, looking slightly uncomfortable, "how have you been?" "Good, really good actually. Business is better than ever. How about you?" "I am glad to hear that. I want you to know I felt terrible about what Sharon was doing. I almost said something earlier, but I did not want to get involved. I understand. But when you did come forward, it made a real difference. Thank you for that." She smiled, looking relieved. "I am just glad it all worked out. The neighborhood is much more peaceful now." As I drove home from the store, I thought about Patricia's comment. The neighborhood was indeed more peaceful. Without Sharon's constant surveillance and enforcement actions, people seemed more relaxed. I saw neighbors talking to each other more. Kids playing in the streets without parents worrying about HOA violations for toys left in yards. It turned out that one person's obsessive rule enforcement had been casting a shadow over the entire community. With that shadow lifted, Desert Springs Estates had become the kind of neighborhood it was supposed to be all along. A place where people could live their lives without constant fear of arbitrary citations and fines. My own life had settled into a comfortable rhythm. I would wake up early, load my truck with my heated pressure washer and supplies, and head out to clean food trucks and carts across the Phoenix metro area. Each day brought interesting conversations with my clients, who ran everything from gourmet food trucks to simple hot dog carts. They all had dreams and stories, and I was proud to be part of their success by helping them maintain the sanitation standards required for their businesses. Tommy proved to be an excellent assistant. He was meticulous about following proper cleaning protocols and had great customer service skills. Within a few months, he was handling some jobs independently, which allowed me to take on even more clients or focus on the more complex cleaning projects. 1 year after the entire ordeal began, I was invited to speak at a small business owners meeting in Scottsdale. The organizer had heard about my experience with the HOA and thought it would be valuable for other home-based business owners to learn about their rights. I was nervous about public speaking, but I agreed to do it. On the evening of the meeting, I stood in front of about 30 small business owners and told my story. I explained the importance of proper licensing, documentation, and knowing the laws that protect home-based businesses. I talked about when to fight and when to compromise, and how to handle harassment when it occurs. After my presentation, several people came up to share their own HOA horror stories. One woman ran a home-based bakery and had been threatened with fines for the smell of baking bread. Another man operated a consulting business and had been cited for having too many clients visit his home office, even though he only met with clients once or twice a month. The common thread, I told them, is that HOAs often overstep their authority. They rely on homeowners not knowing their rights. The best defense is being informed and having good documentation. A lawyer in the audience spoke up. I want to add something to what Greg said. Arizona law is actually very protective of home-based businesses. The state legislature recognized that many people need to work from home, and HOAs cannot simply ban that. If you are facing HOA issues related to a legal home business, consult with an attorney. Do not just accept what the HOA tells you. The meeting ended with the organizer thanking me for sharing my experience. As I packed up my materials, a young woman approached me. "Mr. Ingram, I just started a mobile pet grooming business. I have a van with grooming equipment, and my HOA is saying I cannot park it in my driveway. Do you have any advice?" I spent a few minutes talking with her about her situation, sharing Marcus's contact information and explaining the basic principles of Arizona's home-based business protections. It felt good to help someone else avoid the struggle I had gone through. As I drove home that night, I realized how much I had changed over the past year. I had started out just wanting to be left alone to run my business. But the experience had forced me to become an advocate, not just for myself, but for the principle that people should be able to earn a living without unreasonable interference. The heated pressure washer that had caused so much conflict was still in my garage, still essential to my business, still humming away each morning as I loaded it into my truck. But now, it represented something more than just a piece of equipment. It symbolized the fight for reasonable rights and the importance of standing up to abuse of authority. 2 years after everything began, I received an unexpected letter in the mail. It was from Sharon Whitmore. I stared at the envelope for a long time before opening it, wondering what she could possibly have to say after all this time. The letter was handwritten, not typed. It read, "Mr. Ingram, I owe you an apology. What I did was wrong, and I let my desire to control the neighborhood override my common sense and decency. I have spent the past 2 years in therapy working on understanding why I acted the way I did. My therapist helped me realize that I was using the HOA as a way to feel important and powerful when other areas of my life felt out of control. That is no excuse for what I did to you and your business. You were just trying to make an honest living, and I almost destroyed that because of my own issues. I do not expect your forgiveness, but I wanted you to know that I am truly sorry and that I hope your business continues to thrive. Sincerely, Sharon Whitmore." I read the letter 3 times. It was the last thing I had expected. I thought about responding but ultimately decided to simply file the letter away. Some things did not need a response. The apology was enough. Marcus, who I had stayed in touch with over the years, asked me about the letter when I mentioned it. "How do you feel about it?" "Honestly, it helps. Not in some dramatic way, but it closes the loop. She acknowledged what she did was wrong. That is more than a lot of people would do." "You are more forgiving than I would be," Marcus said. "Maybe. Or maybe I just do not want to carry anger around anymore. It is exhausting." Life continued. My business kept growing. Tommy eventually started his own food truck, and I helped him get set up with proper cleaning protocols. I hired a new assistant, a woman named Rebecca who had worked in restaurant management and wanted to transition to something with better hours. The HOA in Desert Springs Estates remained functional but low-key. Bob Chen eventually stepped down as president, and a new generation of board members took over. They maintained the reasonable approach that Bob had established, focusing on genuine community needs rather than petty enforcement. I still lived in the same house, with my heated pressure washer still in my garage. The equipment trailer still sat parked in the same spot. No one complained. No one filed false reports. Life was good. One spring morning, about 3 years after the whole ordeal, I was cleaning a food truck near Arizona State University when a young college student approached me. He was working on a business project and had questions about starting a mobile service business. "My professor said mobile services are one of the best business models for low startup costs," he explained. "I am thinking about starting a mobile car detailing business, but I live in an HOA community, and I am worried about rules against commercial equipment." I set down my spray wand and took a break to talk with him. I explained everything I had learned about Arizona law, home-based businesses, and HOA regulations. I told him about my experience, about standing up for your rights, and about the importance of proper documentation. "The key," I said, "is to know the laws and have all your licensing in order. If you are legal at the city and state level, the HOA cannot override that. They might try, but they cannot succeed if you stand firm." The student thanked me profusely and asked if he could contact me if he had more questions. I gave him my business card and told him I was happy to help. As he walked away, I returned to my work, the heated pressure washer spraying away grease and food residue, transforming the dirty food truck into a sparkling, clean, health code-compliant business asset. This was my purpose. This was what I fought for. Not just the right to keep a piece of equipment in my garage, but the right to provide an essential service, to run an honest business, and to live free from arbitrary harassment. The sun was bright that day, the Arizona sky a brilliant blue. I finished the cleaning job, collected my payment, and loaded my equipment back into my truck. As I drove through the streets of Tempe, heading toward my next appointment, I felt a deep sense of contentment. 3 years ago, I had been ready to give up, to cave to Sharon's demands just to make the harassment stop. But I had fought instead, and that fight had not only saved my business but had taught me the value of standing up for what was right. It had connected me with other business owners facing similar challenges. It had made me part of a larger community of people trying to make an honest living in their own ways. That evening, as I pulled into my driveway and opened my garage door without a second thought, I looked at my heated pressure washer and smiled. It was just a machine, a tool of my trade. But it had become a symbol of something much larger: the right to work, to pursue your livelihood, and to stand up against those who would abuse their small amount of power to take that away. I unloaded my equipment, organized everything in its proper place, and closed the garage door. Tomorrow would bring new clients, new challenges, and new opportunities. But tonight I was home. My business was thriving, and the long fight was finally, truly over. The heated pressure washer sat quietly in the corner of my garage, ready for another day of essential work. No longer a source of conflict, but simply what it had always been meant to be. The tool I needed to run my legal, licensed, and necessary business. And that was exactly how it should have been all along.